Sony Pictures has entered what can only be described as desperation mode in an attempt to draw audiences to theaters. Following a lackluster promotional campaign, they have released an extended 8-minute preview of Kraven the Hunter. Even the film's director has made a direct plea to audiences, asking them to give the movie a chance on the big screen. The studio seems to be banking on the introduction of a new anti-hero, one largely unfamiliar to general audiences. This raises a key question. Who is Kraven? And why does this film appear to be yet another stumble for Sony's superhero universe? To understand the current state of affairs, it's worth taking a step back and examining the history of Sony's journey into the superhero genre, which began in 2002 with Spider-Man. To explain Kraven's origins, we need to go back to the comics, specifically issue number 15 of The Amazing Spider-Man in 1964. His real name is Sergei Kravenov, and he hails from Russia. Kraven is descended from an aristocratic family that fled their homeland after a rebellion, and his lineage includes a long line of hunters. In the comic universe, there are multiple iterations of his story. In some versions, Kraven is a skilled hunter who, after conquering every prey imaginable, seeks a new challenge. He becomes obsessed with Spider-Man, seeing him as the ultimate target to earn the title of the greatest hunter. In another storyline, Kraven's superpowers, super strength, super speed, slowed aging, and heightened instincts, are explained through a ritual. During his travels, he encounters a young Wakandan woman who convinces him to undergo a ritual involving being buried alive and exposed to various substances. Emerging from the experience traumatized and with enhanced abilities, Kraven is reborn with an insatiable bloodlust. After growing bored of hunting animals, Spider-Man becomes his primary obsession. While the web-slinger has consistently emerged victorious in the comics, many consider Kraven's abilities to rival or even surpass those of Captain America. This brings us to the changes introduced in the movie and the reasons behind the backlash following the release of its first trailer. In one pivotal scene, Kraven's father, Nikolai Kravenov, forces him to hunt a lion. After being injured, a drop of the lion's blood mixes with his own, granting him his powers. This explanation has been criticized for being overly simplistic and reminiscent of other lackluster origin stories, such as those in Madame Web and Morbius. This could also explain the film's delays, as it was originally slated for release in January 2023, but has undergone numerous reshoots and changes to its final cut. Another significant change is Kraven's characterization. In the comics, he is unequivocally a villain, ruthless, a killer of animals, and a quintessential antagonist. The film, however, portrays him as the archetypal anti-hero. He doesn't hunt animals, but instead targets bad humans, and is shown to have a connection with nature. This appears to be an attempt to elicit empathy from audiences. Despite its R rating, which could have been an opportunity to depict a true villain, the film opts for a narrative of a good person shaped by a bad environment. Sony's broader goal seems to be introducing all the villains that make up the Sinister Six, with Kraven being one of them. The group also includes Dr. Octopus, Vulture, Electro, Mysterio, and Sandman. Other potential villains who might appear in this movie include Kraven's half-brother, the Chameleon, and the protagonist's love interest, Calypso, a witch who is also an enemy of Spider-Man in the comics. The lead role is played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, a British actor who first appeared as Quicksilver in Avengers: Age of Ultron. Unfortunately, his character was underutilized, as the script had him riddled with bullets. Something physically implausible for someone with super speed. Taylor Johnson has also taken on the role of a different kind of hero, one without powers, in the comedic Kick-Ass. With a remarkable physical transformation, he certainly looks the part for Kraven, but Sony's track record with introducing new characters leaves much to be desired. Early reactions from those who attended exclusive previews have been largely negative, with projections suggesting the film may struggle to earn even a third of its $130 million budget. The director, J.C. Chandor, is best known for his 2019 Netflix action thriller Triple Frontier. While a decent film, it's not exactly a glowing recommendation for handling a major superhero property. In an interview with Variety, Chandor earnestly implored audiences to give the film a chance in theaters. However, Sony's weak promotional campaign could doom Kraven the Hunter to join the ranks of the studio's recent box office failures. This raises a larger question. Why does Sony keep failing in the superhero genre? Is it that the formula has grown stale? Has audience interest waned? Or is Sony simply mishandling these projects? To answer these questions, we need to rewind to 2002. The worst business decision in history. Sony, the Japanese multinational giant, entered the world of cinema in 1991. But how can we explain that a company that began repairing radios after the Second World War went on to create a portable audio device, the most successful video game console, smartphones, and a whole range of electronic products? To become one of the most powerful film conglomerates in Hollywood is the subject of another video, where we will delve into the dark history of the most famous film production companies. In 1999, Marvel was on the brink of bankruptcy. The 1990s simply weren't the era for superheroes, as action films dominated the box office. This financial instability allowed Sony to acquire the film rights to Spider-Man for $10 million. However, there was an additional offer on the table. For just $15 million more, Sony could have purchased the rights to most of Marvel's superhero roster, including Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, Ant-Man, and Black Panther. Notably, characters like the X-Men and the Fantastic Four had already been sold to Fox, while Hulk was owned by Universal. Former Sony executive Yair Landau revealed that the company's leadership didn't believe audiences would care about Marvel's other characters beyond Spider-Man. As a result, Sony declined the offer. To date, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU, which began in 2008 with Iron Man, has grossed over $30 billion worldwide and continues to thrive. This decision is widely regarded as one of the worst in business history. Ironically, for audiences, this misstep might have been a blessing in disguise. Given Sony's inability to craft a cohesive universe even with just a handful of films, it's unlikely the MCU would have achieved its current success under their stewardship. The ambitious interconnected storytelling that culminated in Avengers, Endgame in 2019, after more than 30 films, might never have come to fruition. The fight for Spider-Man's rights. Despite recent missteps, nostalgia plays a significant role in Sony's history with superheroes. The 2002 Spider-Man film starring Tobey Maguire holds a special place in the genre's history. While it wasn't the most faithful adaptation of the comics, or a standout in terms of script or special effects, it marked the beginning of a new era for superhero fans, proving there was a lucrative audience willing to fill theaters. The film was a massive success, earning over $825 million globally on a $139 million budget. In the early 2000s, studios were beginning to carve paths for superhero franchises. X-Men had its trilogy, Blade its own, and Spider-Man followed suit. Even Hulk had 2 adaptations, and Fantastic Four, a property seemingly cursed to fail, had multiple attempts. This era laid the groundwork for the 2008 release of Iron Man, a film that became the cornerstone of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
You just don't know it yet. Who the hell are you? I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative.
In 2009, Disney acquired Marvel for $4 billion, accelerating plans to create a shared universe of interconnected characters. Over the next several years, they introduced audiences to Thor, Captain America, Black Panther, Doctor Strange, and the Guardians of the Galaxy. This left Sony holding only the rights to Spider-Man, a valuable but limited piece of the Marvel pie. Desperate to include Spider-Man in the MCU, Disney struggled to reach an agreement with Sony. Meanwhile, Sony launched a reboot with The Amazing Spider-Man in 2012, starring Andrew Garfield. The film and its sequel were box office successes, though Garfield's portrayal divided fans. Some appreciated the switch from Mary Jane Watson to Gwen Stacy as the love interest, while others remained loyal to the Tobey Maguire era. Finally, in 2016's Captain America: Civil War, Tom Holland debuted as the MCU's Spider-Man, a character teased in 2015's Ant-Man. Holland's inclusion came under a 2015 agreement that allowed Marvel to use Spider-Man in exchange for Sony retaining 95% of profits from standalone films featuring the character. However, this arrangement ended in 2019 due to Disney's push for a more equitable profit split, creating further complications over the web-slinger's future. Sony's refusal to part with Spider-Man, rejecting offers reportedly as high as $5 billion, demonstrates the character's enduring value. But it also underscores the studio's struggles to maintain a cohesive or successful superhero franchise outside of their partnership with Marvel Studios. Spider-Man: Homecoming. After small cameos, Sony finally launches into producing a solo film for the superhero in question. With a more humorous tone and aimed at a new audience, the film becomes a success, grossing more than $880 million on a $175 million budget. In 2018, Sony produced Venom, a film that was well received by the public and was a box office success, costing only $100 million and grossing more than $850 million worldwide. In this story, they gave the symbiote a different origin, more explanatory than the one it had in the third edition of Spider-Man in 2007. Precisely its differentiation from the comics and its non-spider-like appearance earned it some criticism. But being one of the most well-known and beloved villains in the Spider-Man universe, it was a character introduction in which Tom Hardy was able to give it his personal stamp. Spider-Man: Into the Spider-Verse. Encouraged by successful years, they hit the right note. A very successful animated film, both critically and at the box office. Without a doubt, the contrast of universes, the graphic quality, and the script were a success that earned it multiple awards for Best Animated Film of that year. Spider-Man: Far From Home. A new blow on the table for Sony, and the beginning of a Sonyversal. The sequel to Spider-Man arrived just before the beginning of the global pandemic and left the producers with a juicy collection of more than $1 billion, with a budget of $160. Here, they present Mysterio, a villain that could be seen again in the following years. Venom: Let There Be Carnage. The sequel to Venom promised much more than its title delivers. However, it was another success for Sony, raising more than $500 million with only a budget of $90. Quite a success for having been released in the context of a pandemic. But fans were not very satisfied with a well-known villain in the comics who only lasted 10 minutes of battle against Eddie Brock's symbiote. Spider-Man: No Way Home. Once again, the most popular superhero does not fail. A third installment, which is remembered for the fan service, since it includes the universes of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. It left Sony's pockets full, which raised almost $2 billion, with a budget of $260. A record figure for the Arachnid. Something close to what was achieved by Marvel's highest-grossing film, Avengers: Endgame, which raised the incredible amount of $2.8 billion. The fall of Sony. As the saying goes, what goes up must come down, and Sony Pictures seems to be no exception to the laws of physics and economics. After years of box office hits, the studio has entered a period of decline. In 2022, Sony released Morbius, a film that became infamous not for its quality, but for the exact opposite. It wasn't a complete box office disaster, but audiences widely mocked it, considering it unintentionally comedic. With a weak script and performances that many found ridiculous, the film attempted to introduce a new villain, well, more of an anti-hero, destined to face off against Spider-Man as part of the Sinister Six in a future installment. Earlier this year, Sony followed up with Madam Web, another critical and commercial failure. Labeled one of the worst films of the year, it had an enormous budget of $100 million, but barely managed to break even. Perhaps most damaging was the overwhelming audience dissatisfaction after leaving theaters. Then came October 2024, and the release of Venom: The Last Dance, the third and final installment in the Venom trilogy. While the film wasn't a financial flop, earning 4 times its $120 million budget, it performed the worst of the 3 movies in terms of revenue. Fans were left underwhelmed, hoping for a stronger send-off for the beloved symbiote. However, one highlight was the introduction of Null, the creator of all symbiotes, who could potentially serve as Sony's equivalent of the MCU's Thanos. Now, in December, all eyes are on Kraven the Hunter. The film promises a well-known villain, Rhino, with a design more faithful to the comics than the brief appearance in Andrew Garfield's The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Kraven, the titular character, is expected to face off against foes on a smaller scale than we saw in Marvel's Spider-Man 2 for PS5, where only Venom was capable of giving him a real fight. However, with its R rating, Kraven the Hunter is unlikely to match the success of other R-rated superhero films, like Deadpool. Those films benefit from Marvel's unique style, a formula Sony has struggled to replicate. It seems we've entered a period where the superhero genre itself is at a crossroads. Does it need reinvention to stay relevant? What do you think? If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate your support with a subscription and a thumbs up. It helps keep this kind of content coming your way. And if you're curious about the best and worst movies of 2024, be sure to check out the other videos on the channel. Until next time.